Let's talk about Warm Bodies.
Yeah.
We have a clip for the movie, but very unusual premise for this film.
Sure, yeah. It's, it's a human girl who falls in love with a zombie. And, all right, hear me out.
In 2010, the book Warm Bodies hit shelves during the zombie craze. But it wasn't a typical zombie book about humanity's struggle for survival. In fact, it's not even from a human's point of view. The story unfolds from the perspective of a zombie who misses being human and falls in love with a living girl. It's a story author Isaac Marion had his doubts about.
The premise itself seemed pretty far-fetched, and I wasn't sure if people were gonna be able to get to buy into a cannibal corpse as a protagonist, and then accepting a romance.
You fall in love with a zombie boy.
Everyone's been talking about the necrophilia thing. And
I didn't mention it.
Though the book was adapted into a film, bolstering book sales and getting overwhelmingly positive reviews from critics, the concept started off as a joke and has since grown into the biggest success, an obstacle in Isaac's career.
If there's a zombie involved, then it's a zombie novel, and that puts it in this category. I'm sort of on the precipice of being typecast forever.
I'm Doug Frazier, and this is What We Do, where we'll meet the people behind the most intriguing passions, hobbies, and jobs around the world. If you're unfamiliar with Warm Bodies, let's catch you up. The narrator is a zombie who can't remember his past or even his name, so he goes by R. While the zombies around him seem complacent in their lives, R wants more.
I don't want to be this way. I'm lonely. I'm lost.
When R or any of the other zombies eat human brains, he's able to access the person's memories. He can see into their past, feel their loves, their losses. With every brain he consumes, he samples a new life.
I'm sorry, I just can't help it. The brain's the best part.
Though he feeds because he has to in order to stay alive, he's torn between not wanting to hurt people and his desire to live through those memories. While he's feeding, he steps out from his aimless, undead life, and for a fleeting moment, remembers what it was like to be alive.
The first couple of pages of this original short story that I wrote, it was like, oh, this will be kind of a gag. And then as I got into it a little deeper, I was like, oh, actually, this is surprisingly relatable and kind of like important to me as somebody who was struggling with many of those things, like deep depression and alienation in general, and all very zombie-like qualities.
Do you feel like you understand yourself better the more that you write?
The books that I've written so far have all been pretty directly related to my experience at the time, and so they've been kind of like a form of therapy, I would say, in the sense of using my narratives to unpack what is troubling me or what I'm trying to get through. It doesn't always turn out as well for me as it does for my characters. It's not like their happy endings aren't necessarily fully mine. In some ways it's aspirational as well, because I send my characters into places of health and fulfillment that I haven't necessarily reached, but it's something to reach for.
Isaac has published 4 books in the Warm Bodies series, following the character R, who represents a certain side of Isaac, a struggle that he's gone through.
What am I doing with my life? I'm so pale. I should get out more. I should eat better. My posture is terrible. I should stand up straighter. People would respect me more if I stood up straighter. What's wrong with me? I just want to connect. Why can't I connect with people? Oh, right. It's because I'm dead.
Long before the distractions and pressures of success, Isaac was a kid with a crayon, a piece of construction paper, and a poor, strictly religious family.
There was many years of extreme solitude and kind of forced me to become an artist, basically, because I had nothing else to do. It started like, I was 3 or 4 years old, and I was writing little single-page stories or something, and it pretty gradually progressed from there.
10 years later, he came to a realization.
I'd been writing stuff in various forms, but it was always kind of like some alternate route to writing the story. Like I would, make up imaginary video games or something just so I could have an excuse to write the background story. But then it kind of hit me one day. I was like, wait, why don't I just actually write a story? And
by his early 20s, Isaac published a short story online titled, I Am a Zombie Filled with Love, A reader introduced him to a freelance editor who happened to have connections in the entertainment industry. Isaac hired her to edit what would become Warm Bodies.
Had written the book and hired a freelance editor to just give me feedback on it because I was tired of like asking my friends and family to give me their extremely biased feedback and having all the weird social tensions that come with getting critiques from your friends. She really liked the book and sort of took it into her wing as like a pet project and sent it around to like a lot of her contacts.
So here's how the tangled world of publishing works. Shortly after he finished the book, he was getting ready to write submission letters to acquire an agent. If he was lucky enough to land one, his agent would then have to get Isaac's book in front of a publisher, who would then need to consider whether the book would be worth their investment to publish. Then, after a deal's been made, the book should arrive on bookshelves a year or so later. Maybe it's backed by marketing dollars, maybe it's not. Maybe you get a high traffic area at Barnes & Noble stores across the country. Maybe it sits at a string of local bookstores, buried somewhere amongst the spines of countless other books looking for a reader to bring them to life. It all depends on the publisher's investment and strings they can and are willing to pull. That is, if you're fortunate enough to even get a publisher in the first place. After all is said and done, the author receives only about 10% of the sales. Most authors will never make a living off their writing, and many continue to work a full-time job. Being a published author may sound like the dream life on paper, but in reality, it can be an unpredictable and unforgiving world. As Isaac prepared to write a letter that would hopefully land an agent, his phone rang. It was his editor.
I just got this random phone call in the early morning. It was like, hey, there's this producer that wants to come talk to you about making this into a movie.
And just like that, Isaac's zombie story went from being unknown to being the basis of a Hollywood film. Though he wasn't directly involved in the production, he did hang out on the set for a couple weeks.
First exposure was, I walked in as they were shooting like the climactic scene where they're in the water, making out. And that's like when I walk in and everyone's standing around this pool and there's Nicholas Hoult and Teresa Palmer,
who play the lead roles in the film,
making out in the pool, and they see me and they waved because somehow they knew who I was.
A producer introduced Isaac to the staff, including a guy named John. I
turned around expecting to meet some staff person. It's like, oh, Malkovich, John. Like, hello.
What?
Ask some ridiculous question like, how's the movie going or something. Like, oh, it's okay. Got out of there as quickly as possible because I was not prepared for that. It's weird. I mean, it's a fairly small production, so like Malkovich kept to himself for the most part, had his own, I don't know where, some villa that he lived in or something, but the rest of the cast was all staying in the same hotel, and like we'd have dinner together and just like hang out at the end of the day and on set. So like kind of felt like I was part of the crew, even though I wasn't actually doing anything.
Yeah.
Movies are the cultural currency of our time. Like if anything is attached to a movie, no matter what it is, it becomes a household name. There's just no scenario where a book doesn't sell 100 times more if a movie comes out.
It was beyond any dream of a new author. A published book, a movie, and a fan base that was sure to follow any future Warm Bodies books that Isaac would publish. Or would they? Most of the story takes place at an abandoned airport, a setting which Isaac chose for a distinct reason.
It just felt so strange to imagine an airport empty and lifeless because it's, one of the busiest places in the world. And when you take civilization away, it just kind of creates this really stark contrast of like what normal life is like compared to when it stops.
I don't want to be this way. I'm lonely. I'm lost. I mean, I'm literally lost. I've never been in this part of the airport before. I wonder if these guys are lost too. Wandering around but never getting anywhere. Do they feel trapped? Do they want more than this? Am I the only one?
For the film, creating such a setting would cost millions. Fortunately for them, an abandoned airport exists in Montreal, Canada. It's a billion-dollar movie set that's been used for quite a few films, including Steven Spielberg's The Terminal. It turns out that though the movie helped Isaac sell a lot more books, the vast majority of people who saw the movie didn't even know the book existed.
let alone that it's a series. So it's kind of my job ever since then has been to connect people, fans of the movie, to the book. So every time I post about anything, it's like there's always a dozen people who are like, it's a book? And then there's a dozen more, it's a series.
For those who were aware of the book, Isaac had another hurdle to clear, breaking past zombie stereotypes.
I kind of naively assumed that people just read the book and judge it on its own merits, but I quickly found out that it's like, oh no, if there's a zombie involved, then it's a zombie novel, and that puts it in this category, and that makes certain expectations of what the writing is going to be like, what the story is going to be about. The vast majority of even positive reviews generally do say like it's really good for a zombie novel, and like the writing is great for this genre. And there's always this qualification because it's true. I mean, like there are certain thresholds usually for certain genres of like what's expected of them, and I think zombie stuff in particular has fairly low expectations because it's generally thought of as kind of a formula genre where people are just hitting certain beats over and over again, and it's very like workmanlike prose. It's kind of frustrating, but it's also kind of fun, like to see how many people are like surprised because they think they go into it with fairly low expectations, because like even if they like zombie stuff, it's like, oh, what is like a zombie rom-com? Like it's going to be a guilty pleasure at best, if not a total waste of time. And then they're sort of shocked to find out that it's actually, has serious intentions and is written like a real book, so to speak.
For your next books that you're going to be working on, are you going to stay in the zombie realm, or are you going to move to something else?
Definitely not. I'm definitely very done with zombies. I never intended to be the zombie guy. That was always kind of a leap outside of my comfort zone. Just not zombies in particular, but just to like use an established pop culture property as the basis of my story, let alone one that has like so much hyper specific perceptions and baggage connected to it. Like I said earlier, I was not aware of how eager people are to pigeonhole something like that, and it was too late. By the time I discovered that, I'd already kind of made my splash with a zombie novel. I'm sort of on the precipice of being typecast forever, of having written four books in a zombie series. It's going to be difficult to kind of get out of that and be able to write in other realms that I'm more interested in. I get very restless with what I'm writing about, and once I've sort of done something in that realm, I want to go far away from it.
So how does he know what realm to visit next? Some authors ask their publisher what will sell, and that's their next book topic. That kind of direction isn't what Isaac is looking for.
I'm kind of somewhat in awe of people who are able to just churn out books based on, what their publisher tells them to write or something, just like a story that is about someone else for someone else. And they're just like, oh yeah, you got to write, this genre's hot right now, so I'm writing in this, and like they talk about it in this very sort of industrial way, almost like it's commodities. They're like, oh yeah, zombie is up this year, 10 points or whatever. Like it's just kind of grosses me out. And I'm like, who are you? But at the same time, I'm kind of like, I'm envious of that ability. I've kind of resigned myself, basically, to answer your question in a very roundabout way. I've resigned myself to following my gut, for better or worse. And if it leads me back into poverty, that's how it's going to be. It is ultimately the right choice, I think, as far as, what I value in art in general. It's kind of like there's always the sellout temptation. There's times when I'm really down, where I'm just like, where's the paper? Just let me sign it. Let me sell out. What do you want me to write? I'll do it. But then I come to my senses and I'm like, I can't. If I could write something, some trash in like 4 days and make a bunch of money off it, maybe, I would do it under a pseudonym or something. Sure, but it's not something, if I'm going to dedicate a year of my life to it, like it has to be meaningful to me.
It's the tried and true question of the artist. Create a thing you love and hope you're able to make a living off of it, or use your skills to create something you know will sell and possibly destroy your self-identity in the process. In the end, Isaac isn't interested in writing stories guaranteed to be bestsellers. He wants to tell stories that express parts of himself that would otherwise stay hidden from view. And hopefully along the way, those stories connect with people and make them feel a little more human. Hey, it's Doug. Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Isaac and purchase his books, visit isaacmarion.com. That's ISAACMARION.com. When you get a chance, would you mind leaving a rating and review for the show? It only takes a few seconds and it's a huge help. There are a ton of fun episodes coming up, so be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any. To watch a video version of the series, head over to facebook.com/whatwedodocs. Until next time, stay curious.
I'll cry a river of tears that flows to the sea. Baby, if you run away, baby, if you leave, I'm so in love with you, girl. You make me feel brand new.
What We Do with Doug Frazier is distributed by WHRV for WHRO Public Media.